UFC 318, Dustin Poirier's final fight, the last dance in New Orleans. It's rare that the UFC builds an entire card around a fighter's retirement fight, but that is what the UFC has decided to do for Dustin Poirier in his final fight of his career, to put a pay-per-view in his hometown and to put him in the spotlight, even when it's a BMF title and it's an absolute legends fight versus Max Holloway. These guys have already fought 2 times against each other. Dustin Poirier was the first man to welcome Max Holloway into the UFC. And they met up again and had an incredible war. And then this is it. This is the final fight for Dustin Poirier. Max Holloway has said that he wants to be the guy to give to ruin Dustin Poirier's final fight and be the bad guy. And yeah, we're just hopefully in for not really a fight that has much value or any crazy implications, but really just a fight that's completely designed for pure entertainment, pure violence, and that's what we should expect from 2 guys that are willing to put it all on the line in that octagon. And for the first time on my channel, I'm going to break down a card starting from the bottom and moving my way up to the main event. I think that's honestly the way that most people do it, and I'm going to start doing it like that. So we're going to talk about the main event towards the end of the video. I'll be putting timestamps if you want to skip to certain fights that you're interested in. And just first overall thoughts on UFC 318. I know a lot of people have complaints about it, and they've added some more fights since they announced it originally on the UFC 317 broadcast, and everyone's like, whoa, this main card sucks. And like, it had like a Tiba Gutierrez on the main card, and Marvin Vettori and Brendan Allen, and like Patricio Pittbull and Danny Gay is a co-main event. But since then, they've rearranged it, and it's still not the best card. Like, I would rate this card under like maybe a straight 7. But I think the way this card is going to honestly transpire is it's going to deliver. There's a lot of really fun fights that could deliver much better than anyone maybe expects. The name value is not there, but a lot of fun, good, scrappy fights. So we're going to work our way up. So let's just start with early prelims quickly. Yeah, Bruno Ferreira has a new opponent in Jackson McVeigh. His fight got canceled on 317 for Jackson McVeigh. Bruno Ferreira was originally supposed to fight Ikram Aliskerov, which would have been a sick fight to keep on here. So Bruno Ferreira versus Jackson McVeigh, Bruno Ferreira. Then Ryan Spann versus Lucas Brisky. Okay, cool. Jimmy Crute had his split decision versus Rodolfo Bellato. Actually was a really scrappy fight versus Marcin Pracino. And then the featured early prelim is the debut of one of the most talked about prospects. Do not let this fall under your belt, fall under your radar. It's Islam Dulatov, a guy who I think is undefeated and originally was a model. This dude was walking runways before he ended up deciding to take on MMA, and I think is undefeated, has finished all of his opponents prior, is just this really promising knockout artist, and he definitely looks like an insane fighter, in sick shape, and don't let this fall under the radar because this guy could have a lot of potential. And if this is a welterweight bout, then welterweight is getting so crazy. Besides the top 10 of welterweight, you have the up-and-comers like in the mix, and now you just see like Jacoby Smith, like even the unranked fighters at welterweight are really good and some of the best prospects that we can have out of any weight class. So he's taking on Adam Fugit. Expect this to be a showcase performance for Islam Dulatov, his coming out party. And yeah, these Russian guys are just built different. So Islam Dulatov, he talked about prospect to cap on these yearly prelims. Atiba Gutierrez, another fire prospect who picked up a violent finish versus, who was it? It was on Mexico's card, I believe. Versus Daniel Medina. Kind of just Daniel Medina being fed to a young, scary, powerful guy like Atiba Gutierrez, who honestly looks like the next Francis Ngannou after that last performance out of Cameroon. I think he's 21 years old. He's some young age, but he looks huge. And he's taking on Robert Valentin. Atiba Gutierrez to destroy this guy. That's what I'm going with. He had Medina with that crazy like knee or finish, whatever. This guy is looking like a like upgraded version of Francis Ngannou, like a hybrid. So excited to see if this guy could continue to build some hype as a middleweight prospect. Atiba Gutierrez. Then Francisco Prado versus Nikolai Vertrenikov. Argentina versus Kazakhstan. Okay, cool fight. Then you got Marvin Vettori versus Brendan Allen. Thank God this was not the co-main event of a pay-per-view. It's actually on the prelims, which is a way big of a downgrade. This could have been like a main card opener, but we know that there's been beef between these two men, which is the only thing that makes this fight interesting. They both like were fighting in a casino. Punches were thrown. So glad that the UFC was actually able to put together a fight that has some real bad blood behind it. Marvin Vettori coming off the loss versus Roman Dolidze, and Brendan Allen's coming off a nice little skid. One of these guys will bounce back. And I'm just interested in the fight because of the beef. That's really what this fight comes down to. That makes it kind of interesting. But both these guys, whatever, middle of the pack, middleweights. Not much promise for either of them, but yeah. So I think I'm going to win this fight. I think Marvin. I don't even know what kind of sounds I'm making. Marvin Vettori. I don't know. It's hard to rely on either of these guys. Maybe Brendan Allen by submission. Maybe Marvin Vettori. I don't know. He's overrated. And then Vinicius Oliveira versus Kyler Phillips. Vinicius Oliveira. This guy's a fire bantamweight. Beat Said Nurmagomedov. And I thought Said Nurmagomedov honestly might have been the better fighter, but Vinicius Oliveira looks great after that performance versus Said Nurmagomedov. So yeah, Vinicius Oliveira to beat Kyler Phillips any kind of way. Could go to the decision. But I'm going with Vinicius Oliveira as he works his way up the bantamweight rankings. And he also had that crazy finish versus, forgetting who was it. He had like this crazy knee versus Ricky Simone. Oh no, it was Sopaj. That was a decision. Undefeated in his UFC run so far. So, going with Vinicius Oliveira. To open up this main card, you got Michael Zellhuber versus Michael Johnson. Now, this should be a scrap. This really should be a scrap. Daniel Zellhuber is coming off that Fight of the Year candidate versus Ribovics at UFC 306. That was one of the best fights I've ever watched live. Just a crazy back and forth, just exciting boxing, striking exchanges in the pocket. Ribovics had Zellhuber hurt. Zellhuber comes back into the fight. Just showed like the level of grit that those two guys had in that fight. And Michael Johnson, the vet, violent finish in his last fight on UFC Tampa. So I'm expecting a finish. I hope there's just some crazy. Just expect this one to be a scrap, honestly. These two guys, the UFC honestly knew what they were doing, putting this fight together. This will be like a scrappy striking exchange with a lot of boxing, a lot of striking. And hopefully someone will get knocked out. Go either way. Patricio Pittbull versus Dan Ige. Dan Ige's picking up the win versus Sean Woodson, which surprised me. I thought Sean Woodson would pick up the win. So Dan Ige, always hovering around the featherweight. Before that, he lost to Leron Murphy. Before that, he took the short notice versus Diego Lopez. That really kind of put him on the map for me when he took the fight on 3 hours notice. Something like that, the day of. So, mad respect to him. And he's taking on Patricio Pittbull. Both fought on UFC 304. Patricio Pittbull, in his UFC debut, loses to Yair Rodriguez. Yair Rodriguez was doing all kinds of great striking on Patricio Pittbull, ground and pound. He really beat him decisively. Like, Patricio Pittbull did not show much as this legendary Bellator fighter coming to the UFC, two-weight division champion. We didn't see much from Patricio Pittbull. Maybe it was too much for him, like, he wasn't ready yet for that UFC level. I don't know. Patricio Pittbull needs to win here. He needs to win so that we could still value these Bellator signings, like, that they are could hang with any of the UFC talent, because right now none of these Bellator fighters coming to the UFC have shown anything versus the UFC talent. And especially Patricio Pittbull, a guy like Pittbull, who's old, doesn't have much left in the gas tank, right? He has to make a quick run if he wants to get any kind of shot at a UFC title. So imagine he loses his fight versus Dan Ige and he's lost his first 2 fights in the UFC. Patricio Pittbull needs to win this. He needs to win so we could get some kind of credibility back to Bellator fighters, because otherwise the UFC's like, what are these guys even doing? Why are we even still signing these guys? None of these guys are performing to the levels that we need them to perform. Patchy Mix, just saw him get outclassed by Mario Batista. Patricio Pittbull gets outclassed by Yair Rodriguez. We might see Aaron Pico just get completely dominated by Movsar Evloev in a few weeks. So Patricio Pittbull needs this win. And yeah, legendary fighter at Bellator, but in UFC so far, hasn't been looking great. So I'm going to pick Patricio Pittbull to beat Dan Ige. I think Patricio Pittbull is going to come back right, and he's going to get the win. Kevin Holland has returned again after that first round submission versus Vicente Luque. But Kevin Holland fighting every 2 months. Really just incredible. This guy just willing to hop on any card. And he's taking on Daniel Rodriguez, D-Rod, who's coming off the win versus, what was his name? What am I forgetting? Let me just check. Sometimes it's hard to just remember every single fight that these guys had. Oh yeah, it was Ponzinibbio at Iowa. Hopefully this is a really fun scrap. 2 guys with mouths, personalities. You know, Kevin Holland loves to talk. This should hopefully be fun, just like Kevin Holland's last fight. Kevin Holland's on a little bit of a streak right now. Beat Gunnar Nelson. Beat Vicente Luque after coming off a few losses. Kevin Holland gets a win here versus Daniel Rodriguez. Okay, Kevin Holland at welterweight. Starting to make some noise again in his UFC career. Kevin Holland's always going to be willing to fight. He's always going to be willing to collect the check. So, and Daniel Rodriguez, great win versus... And you know what? I'm picking Kevin Holland again. I'm picking Kevin Holland again to get it done. Maybe not by submission in the first round. I think this one will go a little bit deeper than it did with Vicente Luque. But Kevin Holland knows that he's been some type of different way at welterweight, and he had a lot of success versus Vicente Luque early in that fight. So, and Daniel Rodriguez with the crazy finish. That was a crazy clip where like Ponzinibbio was trying to get up and he started falling on his face while Rodriguez was like doing his yell. That was funny. So this was a great fight to add on just to make the card a little bit better. But I'm picking Kevin Holland. And then Paulo Costa versus Roman Kopylov, a fight that was supposed to happen on 3/17, gets moved to here. And it's the same as every other time that this fight was originally booked. Most people are going to be picking Roman Kopylov to tag up Paulo Costa on the feet. Paulo Costa just isn't where he once was, right? He came into the Israel Adesanya fight undefeated. Since then, hasn't really been able to get back that momentum to get on top. He lost to Whitaker. Most recently, Sean Strickland. But he beat Rockhold, lost to Vittori and Adesanya. I don't know. So, Costa, yeah. Don't have much to say on this fight. I'm not really too interested in it, but I'm going to go with Roman Kopylov. And yeah, that's my thoughts on that fight. Your co-main event for 318 is Paulo Costa and Roman Kopylov. Not the best, but whatever. And then at the top of this card, Dustin Poirier, the Diamond, in his final fight of his legendary UFC career versus Max Holloway. And you know, it's just kind of interesting because this fight kind of overshadows the significance of Max Holloway fighting again, because it's Dustin Poirier's last fight. Like, this is just some kind of exhibition fight. That's what, I don't know if I'm the only one that feels that way, but that's kind of the feeling I get from this fight. Just like it was with Max Holloway versus Justin Gaethje. Like, Max Holloway is in this weight class now. He has what to fight for. Like, he still has aspirations to maybe get a title one more time. He just said this past week that he wants to fight, he has maybe 4 more fights in his career. Also, the guy who's now the champion of the division was his most recent loss when he got knocked out for the first time in his career by Ilia Topuria. But before that, of course, the ultimate classic moment where he delivered that final second KO versus Justin Gaethje. He outclassed an entire fight, points down. Like, let's just put it all here, Justin, and ends up sleeping him cold. Nobody's done that to Justin Gaethje. Max Holloway, featherweight legend, but making the permanent move to lightweight now. So Max Holloway has what's to fight for beyond this fight. But for Dustin Poirier, okay, either whether you win or not, whether there's a significance to the BMF title or not, this just feels like it's just his send-off fight. And like I said at the beginning of this video, it's rare that the UFC will organize an entire event and pull all the stops to give a fighter this kind of spotlight. But Dustin Poirier is that kind of legend that it could work. Because most fighters don't get to retire on their own terms. Not Anthony Smith, not Dominic Cruz. None of these guys really are getting this kind of treatment. But it's fitting for Dustin Poirier, who's given us some classics over the years. Some of the best fights in UFC history have come from Dustin Poirier. Even his last fight, he took Islam Makhachev 4 rounds. Like, that was honestly incredible that he was able to go through that kind of war with Islam Makhachev in his last fight where he got another title shot. Dustin Poirier just takes on all the craziest fighters. You look at his last 10 fights, he's taken on some of the biggest fighters in the sport. Of course, he had that loss versus Justin Gaethje, but he beat Michael Chandler, lost to Charles Oliveira, won another shot that he had at the title, but he beat Conor McGregor back-to-back, one of the most legendary trilogies. Had that insane fight versus Dan Hooker, Khabib, Max, Alvarez, Gaethje the first time again. Eddie Alvarez again, Michael Johnson. Just such a career for Dustin Poirier. And then came back versus Benoit Saint-Denis. And then did what he had to do versus Islam Makhachev and lost. So his last fight. I'm happy that he's fighting again, though, that we get that one last fight to truly see and appreciate Dustin Poirier before he really goes away. Because he could have just hung it up after that Islam Makhachev fight. So yeah, I don't know, honestly, what else there is to say about this. Like, it's a BMF title fight, sure. And we'll see who the baddest of them all is. But hopefully it's just an entertaining all-around classic war. And we go into that final round and Max Holloway's pointing down. Like, let's go. Let's put it all here for the fans, Dustin. And Dustin comes in and they just start winging and slinging. So, and again, Max Holloway, he's coming out there to win. No matter what you got to do, it's a fight. So I think Max Holloway is going to win in the final fight of their trilogy that is 2-0 right now. I'm going with Max Holloway. He needs to. It's for the greater good, even if Dustin Poirier gets sent off on a loss, whatever. So yeah, just incredible career from Dustin. We just got to enjoy him while we have this final fight from him. Just an absolute legendary fighter is one of the best boxers. We have 2 of the best boxers going head-to-head here to give us a really entertaining fight. And yeah, just Max Holloway. If he loses this, I could see them putting him up against Charles Oliveira next. Because Charles Oliveira said he wants to fight again in December, November. So maybe they give him, they do a Charles Oliveira and Max Holloway fight. But then what do you do with the BMF belt if Dustin wins? Just hang it up for good? Maybe put it in a new weight class? Put it up for Pantoja versus Merab? That's what we're going to have to do to get Pantoja and Merab to fight. So yeah, that's my thoughts on UFC 318. As I mentioned, just not really below average. I mean, not below average. Just like a medium card. But I think the fights are going to deliver a lot better than what's on paper right now. I just feel like it's one of those type of cards. And at the end of it all, we'll have Dustin Poirier hopefully gets walked out by Little Wayne, gets sent out there to one last time. And we'll see him deliver hopefully a legendary classic final fight in which Max Holloway will oblige. So those are my thoughts on 318. Until next time.